garbage for the year. It is, I'll pass it around so you can see what's in there. It's clean. I've cleaned everything, so you can open it up and poke around in there if you want to, but there's a lot of little things that can't end up in the recycling bin, so they ended up in here. But I'll talk about how I did this. But I will say that the goal for you is not to get here. If you want to get here, wonderful. But don't feel like you have to get down to a jar of garbage for an entire year. I did this because it was an experiment. I wanted to see if it was possible. It is possible, and I'll talk about how I did it, but don't feel that you have to get to this level. I think just the fact that you're even here at the workshop today is, I think, just a step in the right direction. So I'll pass this around, you can have a look at it. So just a quick bit on climate change. So I think most of us know that the climate is changing. Last year, the International Panel on Climate Change gave us about 12 years, I think we're down to about 11 years now, to limit the catastrophic effects of greenhouse gases and what's happening to the temperatures on the planet. So we know that Earth is getting warmer. So just really quickly around, I'm just going to give you the 30-second explanation of how this works. So for centuries, we've had what's called the natural greenhouse effect. So our planet is surrounded by our atmosphere, and our atmosphere is made up of gases, greenhouse gases. And it's these greenhouse gases that made the planet warm enough to live in. So the energy from the sun comes to the earth, some of it gets bounced back into space, some of it gets re-emitted and warms our planet. However, in the last couple hundred years, we've had what's called an enhanced greenhouse effect. So we're creating more of these gases, more of them are getting trapped in the atmosphere, and as a result, when that energy from the sun comes to the earth, not as much as bouncing back out to space, and it's getting trapped. And as a result, temperature is going up, temperature goes up, our climate starts to change. So very quickly, I think climate change is a result of three, I could talk for hours about this, but really it narrows down to me, the way I think about this is three big issues. One is fossil fuels. We're burning fossil fuels for energy, for manufacturing, transportation. Then we're clearing land. So land use is an issue because we need to build homes and we need to build businesses and we need pulp and paper and we need agriculture. So what we're doing is we're clearing land, and what ends up happening there is we cut down all those trees, and those trees release their stored carbon back into the atmosphere when they've been cut. Now we have fewer trees to clean the air, and then we put something on that land that's going to burn fossil fuels. So land use is a really big issue. And then the last thing, which I think is sort of a driver for the first two, is consumption. So we buy a lot and we waste a lot of stuff. So I think, and we can go into more detail on this later, I don't want to spend a ton of time on it, but to me those are sort of really the big three issues. We're here to talk about waste and garbage. So why does it matter? We know that it's got to go somewhere. When you throw it out, it just doesn't go out, it doesn't go away, it's got to go somewhere. So it either ends up being incinerated or ends up in a landfill, or it ends up in our environment as litter. Then we've got people who are buying more and spending more, and then they have to manufacture more, and then more of that, all those goods have to be moved, and all of these things create emissions. So this is a really big contributor to climate change. In terms of what you can do about climate change, again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but just a couple of things that I think are really important to know. Either you can change your behavior, or you can try and change someone else's behavior. I think in terms of changing your behavior, getting informed is a really good start. So David Suzuki, I'll just give you a couple of websites that you can hit that are really reputable sources of information. David Suzuki Foundation, they have a newsletter. He actually has a person working there who's called the Queen of Green, and she has all kinds of really great recipes for, household cleaners, things like that. There's also on Facebook, there's a group called Waves of Change, and it's a group that you can join, and they post a lot of really great information about climate change issues. We also have an organization in Toronto called Environmental Defense. If you're looking for the truth, if you're looking for the nitty-gritty on a lot of these environmental issues, this is the place to go. These guys do amazing work. And the last one is CBC, and there's more, I'm sure, but CBC has a newsletter that you can sign up to. It comes to your email once a week, and it's called What on Earth? And it's usually 4 or 5 digestible little bits of information around climate change, and it's a really good one, short, easy to read. in terms of changing someone else's behavior, I think we need to get a little bit more involved and speak out a bit more often. I think our voices are louder than we realize. The one thing that I really like telling people about is the Environmental Registry of Ontario. How many people have heard of this? Good. 1. Yay. That's great. Because I think everyone in Ontario needs to know about this website. When there is a proposed change to a legislation or regulation that's going to have an impact on the environment, by law, they have to post it on this website and make it open to public comment. So anytime they're going to do anything that's going to have an impact on the environment, you can have your say, and you can have your say on this website. And there's even a form right on the website that you can type your comments into. So that's a good one to check periodically just to see. So the big one that I remember they just posted was the discussion paper on litter and waste in Ontario, and it was the plan that the provincial government is proposing to address litter and waste in Ontario. So you could read that and then you can have your say about it, which incidentally I thought was a really good discussion paper. I thought they've got some good plans coming down the pipe. Okay, so let's talk about ways to reduce waste. I think the first thing is we need to get a little bit more back to basics, right? You think about what in 50, 70 years ago, this wasn't really an issue, right? There was, you returned your milk bottles, you returned your pop bottles, you drank from water fountains, you refilled your pens.
We had no plastic.
There was no plastic, right? So I think we need to get back to living a little bit more like this. And I think a lot of the time we end up talking about recycling when we talk about reducing waste, but I think that should be the last thing we talk about. I think we really need to talk about refusing and reducing first. So I'll talk about that. So I'm going to go through the top 10 ways that I think, strategies that you can employ to reduce your waste. So when I decided to go zero waste on January 1st of this year, I took about 3 months at the end of last year to figure out how to do it. Because I had to figure out what containers did I need and where do I need to shop and what recipes am I I had to test recipes, and I need food recipes and cleaning recipes, and I had to do research. I met with the recycling people. So I did a lot of work, and so what I'm hoping to do is squeeze those 3 months down into like the next hour for you so that you don't have to do all that legwork yourself. The other thing is I will go, so did I mention I'll be emailing you afterwards a summary of this presentation?
Perfect.
So you'll be getting a summary. You won't get the actual presentation, but you'll get the key points. And then the other thing is that to go zero waste, I think we're starting to see zero waste become a real entrepreneurial enterprise. You can use what you have in the house. You can buy stuff that's made local. There are also a lot of businesses that are selling very expensive, very beautiful zero waste items. It doesn't have to be expensive. It can be free. I will say that I do have some zero waste products for sale over here. The only reason that I have these here is just to save you a trip to the store. You can buy all these products for the same price, exactly the same price, at Harmony Market, except for the produce bags. I bought those at Metro store, but the prices are the same, but it's just really, they're just here to save you a trip in your car. Okay, so let's talk about the top 10 ways. The first thing is consume less, right? I think this is a no-brainer. I think we need to own less. We need to buy less. We have a lot of clothes and a lot of skincare products and a lot of things. We use a lot of these things. We don't necessarily need to use as much shampoo or as much toothpaste. And I think even eating less. The second thing that we're going to talk about is shopping package free. And I think really this is the crux, right? This is it. This is where you're going to reduce, 70 to 80% of the waste in your house. I'll talk about how to do that. We'll talk a little bit about how to say no to plastic and bringing your own reusable items. I have this little thing that I stole off Facebook. I absolutely love this. It's a picture of a plastic spoon, and it says that really the short story is it's amazing that society's gotten to the point where the effort to extract the oil from the ground and refine it and turn it into plastic and then just get it to a store and then buy it and bring it home from the store is considered less effort than it is to just wash the spoon when you're done with it. So I love that. That's so right along with my philosophy. We're going to talk a little bit about packaging. So when you do have to buy packaging, what to buy. We're going to talk about making a lot of your own stuff. I make a lot of my own things, and I don't spend hours and hours a week making things. The stuff that I make lasts a really long time. So in fact, I feel like it's less effort than it used to be because you have to shop so often. Reusing and repurposing things, so just switching to reusable items, and then just giving life to old things, new life to old things. Repairing things, so there's a lot of really great repair cafes that are happening now. They're starting to spring up. I've seen mostly of them in Guelph and Toronto. I haven't really seen them so much in this area. Sharing is the other thing. So sharing economy is really big. The Guelph Lending Library, the Tool Library in Guelph, their motto is lending is the new spending, which I think is a great slogan. Shopping sustainably, so not only what materials to shop for, but how to shop, right? How to shop in sustainable ways. We'll talk about that. Talk a little bit about composting and a little bit about recycling. But before we move on, I'm assuming we've all heard of the 3 R's, right? Do people know the 5 R's now? And there's so many R's. There's so many R's, but really here's how it boils down. Refuse, that's the first thing. It's just to not buy it, not bring it home. The second one is reduce, so we just, making sure that we're reducing the output on the other end. Reusing where we can. Rot is the new 4th of R, and then recycle. And this is deliberately in this order because refuse should always be our first choice. And recycle, always the last choice. So I'm going to talk about recycling. I'm just going to say right now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on recycling because I know that we can spend the whole 2 hours talking about recycling. How many people have heard of the term downcycle? So when you put glass or metal into a recycling facility, it comes out the other end as the same quality glass and metal. But when you put plastic through the process, it comes out the other end as an inferior plastic product. And eventually that plastic will go through the cycle enough times that when it comes out the other end, it can't be used and ends up in the landfill. So if anything, we just need to switch away from plastic to glass. So when I shop, if I'm buying something and I have a choice between a plastic container and a glass container, I'll always opt for the glass container for that reason. I think it's incumbent on us to know what can and can't be recycled. I will be honest, before I started doing this and really becoming aware about recycling, I used my blue bin like a garbage can. I just threw everything in there. I didn't clean it, didn't look it up, didn't figure out whether or not it was supposed to go in there or not. I think it's really important that we know, and I think our public works departments need to do a really good job, and I think to some degree they do, educating us, but then I think it's up to us to figure out, the detail around that. So I know that is there a lookup in Orangeville for what you can put in your blue bins? Use that. Make sure that you know, and don't just assume that you know what can go in the blue bin. I thought for years that deodorant containers, plastic deodorant containers could go in the recycling bin. They can't.
I thought yogurt cups. But there are 6 yogurt cups, right?
Individual size?
The little ones, yeah.
The little ones.
I know.
Right.
I thought,
yeah.
This is all right. I'm putting them in the recycling.
So not all plastic can be recycled, right? So we just need to make sure that we know what can go in there. Cleaning it's really important. I think for those of you who saw the marketplace episode last night, a lot of the reason that our recycling doesn't get recycled and doesn't get shipped off to other countries is because it's contaminated. And it's contaminated because we don't clean it before it goes in the bin. Hazardous waste, that's another thing that never occurred to me before I started, that there are things in my house that should be put in hazardous waste that I was throwing in the trash. Mm-hmm. So obvious things like solvents and paints, you wouldn't put in the trash. You would take that to a recycling center or a hazardous waste center. But things like vitamins, or nail polish remover. Those are the kinds of things that can also go to those facilities. Now here again, maybe not those particular items, but just give some thought to learning what can go into hazardous waste instead of it ending up in the landfill.
The vitamins, you can bring them back to any grocery or any
pharmacy. Yeah, they'll take those, which is really great. Okay, and then thinking outside of the blue box, so there's companies, one in particular called Terracycle, which I love.
Years ago.
Yeah. So this company will actually allow you, sometimes it's free and sometimes it's not. You have to go on their website to find out. But what they do is you send some of these hard to recycle items that your municipality won't take, they will take.
Like cigarette butts. They'll take cigarette
butts.
Right.
Now I think those ones you have to pay for.
Maybe.
But I know things, so when it's free because the company that's created the waste has hired Terracycle to take it back. So there's a pet food company called Open Farm, Brita filters, water filters, Nespresso pods. All of those companies have contracted Terracycle to process their recycling for them instead of it ending up in the landfill.
When you say espresso pods, do you mean
Nespresso.
Nespresso?
That-
Yeah, 'cause
that
I send
brand.
those back.
Yeah. So you can send them. I think you can send them back to Nespresso.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I do.
but
They
recy-
give you a bag.
so Terracycle, what you do is you sign up on their website, and then you pick. Let's say you pick the Nespresso pod or the Brita filter. You pick that, and it'll print a shipping label for you, and then you take a small cardboard box and you stick all your filters in there, and you put the shipping label on it and take it to the post office, and it's free. I'm going to move on to rooms of like strategies in the home. So this is a picture of Bea Johnson's house. Do people know who she is?
No.
She's considered the mother of the zero waste movement. She wrote a book called Zero Waste Home, and this is her house, which my house doesn't look anything like this, but very streamlined and minimal. So before we go room by room, I want to start at the grocery store, because I think that's where we're going to have a really big impact. So, of course, bring out your own produce bags. So we've got samples there. We've got bread bags here. We've got one shopping bag there and some produce bags as well. And so I think if we say no to plastic bags, I think that's always a step in the right direction. Again, so refusing being our first strategy. I think I've read recently that worldwide we use about 1 million plastic bags a minute. Yeah, is that heartbreaking, isn't it? Shopping package free. So this is, to me, cornerstone strategy. Shop for goods that don't come in packaging. And when I shop at like a local grocery, like a chain, like a Sobeys or a Zehrs, I will, so you can see there's a picture of really beautiful bell peppers, and right beside them are bell peppers in a plastic bag. So just buy the ones that don't come in plastic. And then, so shopping, grocery shopping. So I'll shop, so you can see in this photograph, my meats I buy from Dave's Butchers here in town. He lets me bring in my own jars, which is fantastic. In fact, Grant Peters was telling me he brings in his crock pot, and they put the crock pot on the scale, and then he sticks a whole chicken in the crock pot. And he comes home with the whole chicken. So that's really great. And then you can see I've got some vegetables there that are in my own produce bag, some bread from a local bakery that I bought in a paper bag, and then just loose fruit and a couple of jars of grains that I bought from the bulk barn. I also eat a lot better than I used to, because for this very reason. Finding those friendly stores, so like I said, Dave's Butcher, Fromage here in town will also allow you to bring in your own containers, and they will let you do takeout in your own containers as well. Not every place in Orangeville will do that. And then Unboxed Market is just another example. There's that one's the new one that opened up downtown Toronto. If you're in Waterloo, there's one called the Zero Waste Bulk Store. Highly recommend that store, really good one. I go there, well, I've been there twice this year. And I load up. I'll buy giant jars of everything, just so I don't, because I'm not in Waterloo very often and I don't want to travel there unnecessarily. Shopping local is really important. So how many people are at the farmer's market this morning? Yeah, right? So it's really good. I go with my basket. I mean, literally, I will go with this basket to the farm and I will fill up. And then when they give me the plastic containers, I just dump it in my basket and give the plastic container back to them. Beer, there's a local microbrewery that I can buy beer that comes in reusable growlers. So the big jars. So you just take it back and they'll fill it up with more beer for you, which is great. But really, again, beer, it comes in glass or metal, so it's sort of less of an issue. Bulk. Hands down, 50% of what comes into my house for groceries comes from the bulk store. So how many people have shopped at the bulk stores with their own jars? Oh, good. Oh, good. That's great. Easy to do. You just go in with your jar. I used to use these, and I've kind of switched over to the plastic. I know it's plastic, but these will last a really long time. And they're just easier to carry around, so my jars aren't clinking around in the car. But I will keep these jars in, oh, it's not here, but I have a huge bag, reusable bag that has the mason jar box with the mason jar dividers in it, and I just keep that in the car with jars in it, so that when I need to go to bulk barn, I have what I need. And I think most people know how this works. You just go in, you weigh the jar, they write the weight on it, and then you fill up your jar, and away you go. Ensure it's recyclable. So again, here we're talking about these little yogurt cups. In Peel, if it's less than 3 inches, in diameter, it's garbage. Even though it's plastic, it can't go through the recycling process. It's too small, which is exactly the same reason why the caps on the water bottles can't go in the recycling. Now, maybe here they can, and I've even read in some places they ask you to leave the cap on. Other places they tell you to take the cap off. Other places they tell you cap goes in the garbage. So again, it's just we need to put the onus on ourselves to
Look at
look it up.
to not buy them.
To not buy them.
Yeah.
Yes, even better. Yes. Okay, kitchen. So I make a lot of my own food. I don't necessarily consider myself a great cook, so this has been a real learning curve for me. But the top picture is the bread that I made recently, and it's easy. It's four ingredients. You throw it in the mixer and you leave it for overnight, and then you pop it in the oven, and that's what comes out. You don't even have to knead it. So, and I'll send you, in addition to this, the information from the slides, I'll send you a list of links, and one of the links will be the link to the recipe for this bread, which is super easy and delicious. The crackers are also the crackers that I make on a regular basis, very easy to make. I always tell people that in the morning, on a Saturday morning, I'll turn on the kettle, I'll make the crackers, put them in the oven before the kettle even pops. Like, it's very simple to cook. And now I've made a point to find recipes where they're not complicated. I used to have all these complicated recipes that would take 14 ingredients, and you had to go to 4 stores looking for this one thing. You don't even know what it is. I don't cook like that anymore. Swaps. This is a big thing in the kitchen. Foil. I've gotten away from using tin foil, and I use parchment paper for everything now. And the beauty of parchment paper is that it protects your pans from getting dirty, because I'm too lazy to clean them. But even better, it goes in the compost bin when you're done with it. It's compostable. Glass jars, obviously, you can see that's my cupboard. It's full of all my bulk barn items. I have snack bags. So I've gotten away from Ziploc, and I switched to these. Look how cute this little beaver with the axe, so cute. But it's waterproof, and you can put in somewhat wet. I wouldn't put in too wet of a snack in there, but I put in snacks in there and carry these around with me as well, so you can get a feel for what's on the inside there. And those are available at the bulk barn here in town. And then coffee. So I've switched to, obviously, my own travel mug. I buy my beans at the bulk barn, and I grind them, put them in the freezer, and then I use a French press. So it is literally the only thing that's any waste is the composted grounds. Those disposable coffee pods, they create a lot of waste. You can buy, if you really like the coffee pods, you can buy a reusable pod that you can refill as well, instead of just throwing them out each time. So that's an option as well. Composting, so I just always make a little plug here to make sure that the only thing that goes in your compost bin is food waste, not wasted food. And then just looking at ways to make things last longer. So there's a ton of different things, like storing your lettuce and your herbs in a glass of water in the fridge, wrapping your leafy greens in a damp paper towel or unpaper towel, and then putting them in the fridge. Same with bananas. Apparently you can put a little, something on the top of the banana so that the methane doesn't come out, and they don't rot quite as fast. So there's all kinds of things. There's a million of these ideas online as well. Just a word on bioplastics. So there's a lot of, like I said, zero waste is becoming a real enterprise around the world, and a lot of companies are coming out with products that they claim are recyclable or they claim are compostable. Not necessarily. So bioplastics, which are plant-based plastics that are biodegradable, are not allowed in our recycling program, neither in the blue bin or in the compost bin. So if you put it anywhere, it's going to contaminate. So just, again, a word of caution.
What's an example of that?
So right now, I don't know, I haven't seen them in the stores, but you can buy a bag of sugar snap peas that come in a plastic bag, and the bag will be labeled bioplastic, right? And that it feels like regular plastic, but because it's plant-based material, the idea is that it will biodegrade. But I have heard that people who compost at home put those bags in their compost, and 3 years later they're still there. So let's move on to cleaning. So I think cleaning is, we have a lot of, this is who was talking about the marketing piece earlier, that we're really influenced just to use a lot and buy a lot and waste a lot. We don't need a lot of, the marketers would have us believe that we need a separate product for every job in the house. We don't, we really don't, right? I have 2 things, really. I have a soap scum that I make myself, soap scum remover, and an all-purpose cleaner. That's kind of it. However, having said that, just because I work for public health, I think it's still important to have a disinfectant as well, but just keep in mind about the packaging and the toxicity of some of those things. So we don't need as much as we think we do. We need, again, use less. We don't need to use quite as much. And then again, some of these products have a lot of stuff in them that we don't want in our homes. Make your own, so make your own cleaners. I make my own dish tabs. I said the cleaners that I already made, and then I make my own rags and things like that. Just stuff that I have left over in the house. So that's actually a picture of my dishwasher tabs. We're going to come back to that later today. And then switching to reusable, so getting away from like the disposal pop-ups. So the picture of the purple stuff in the jar are disinfectant rags that I have. So those are made with soap and isopropyl alcohol. And the recipe I actually will send to you as well. But it's cleaner and a disinfectant, and so you can clean your surfaces with that. Having said that, if you have someone in the home who is particularly sick with a very infectious type illness, flu, norovirus in particular, you might want to switch to something a little more powerful. And then the little reusable, these guys.
Fireballs.
Thank you. So, so these ones I made. If you've been to the farmer's market in Orangeville, you would have seen the guy who has the farm with the wool.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the wool from him and I made my own dryer balls. These were really fun to make. You don't have to make these. You can buy tennis balls from the dollar store. You can buy, they're very easy to make, but they do speed up the drying time and they soften your clothes and they eliminate the need for those dryer sheets. So that's all I use for in my dryer. The other thing that I use, which I absolutely love, how many people have heard of soap berries? Oh, good. How many people have you guys used them?
Yeah. Soap berries?
Okay, I love telling people stuff about. Okay, this is so exciting. So these are the soap berries. I'll hand these around, but so you can buy these at the bulk barn in town. What you do is you buy the little bag with it, and you put 4 berries in the bag, and then you kind of crush it a little bit, and then you can put it in with your clothes in the wash. You don't put it in the drawer. You put it in with the clothes, and you can use 4 berries for 4 loads, and then you open it up, dump it out. Berries go in the compost bin when you're done. So just to give you an idea of how these work, these berries are grown, they're not grown in Canada, unfortunately, but they are sustainably sourced. So what I do is I always make sure that the berry is a little open, crushed, and then when you put it in the sewing or the washing machine, and it agitates, it actually makes, right, a detergent. And apparently you can do, cleaners and hand soaps and all kinds of things with these berries. I've only ever used it in the laundry, but you can see how it really does make a lot of soap. So there you go. So I'll hand this around and you can have a look at the berries. Those are really great for laundry. The other thing is to make sure that we make it last, right? Like I think this is a double-edged sword, really, because one is we want to make our clothes last as long as possible. We want to get out the stains and sew up all the rips and fix all the broken buttons, but also we're also tend to buying lower quality clothes that just don't last very long and maybe not necessarily worth those repairs. So you have to decide. I'd like to switch over to higher quality clothing, but I also have this, and you can buy these kinds of books anywhere, but did anybody remember Haley's Handy Hints? Am I the only one that remembers this? So he used to have a little TV show on after school. I'm dating myself now. But this book is just a whole book of like environmentally safe cleaning tips. And there's books like this everywhere, so you can have a look at that. But just things like making sure that we get our shoes resoled and our clothes mended instead of just throwing that stuff away. Where am I? Decant. So again, I buy as a big a container of hand soap as I can, and then I decant them into smaller containers. That way you're not, the little plastic soapy pump things that come out with the foamy, like those end up in the garbage afterwards, right? That can't be recycled. And then composting. So my floor sweepings go into the compost bin. I used to throw those in the garbage, and then it occurred to me it's just dirt and food, right? So that could probably just go in the compost bin. And then I have these fire bags in my house. So I take this little paper bag, And I have them in some rooms in my house. And again, I just want to clarify, I'm not advocating that we burn our garbage in any way, but things like paper Q-tips with a paper stick, chopsticks, the little wooden skewer that comes in my hamburger, little bits of thread, things like that go in my bag. And then when I go camping or have a fire in the backyard, that's what I use for kindling. We need, again, going back to this buying less, we don't need to own as much. Like I think most of us have a lot of product in our bathrooms. I got rid of a lot of the stuff that I don't use because, you know, you buy something and you're kind of iffy about it and it just sits there. And I don't think we need really all those things. Again,
Did you get rid of it?
I used it up and then I used it up and got rid of it and didn't replace it. Or in some cases, I did actually throw it away because it was like, you know, expired or whatever, which is, you know, that whole process of the 3 months leading into this year. I have a friend who actually made a New Year's resolution to give away all of her products to her friends. And so everybody took something and they all used it and all got used up, which I think is really great. When you're looking at purging your clothing, the one thing that I read somewhere, actually it was in a finance book, which was odd, but they said to look at the clothing and then instead of deciding whether you should keep it or not, think about what you would pay for it if it were in a store. Like, would you buy this item if it was in a store? And like for most of my clothing, I would be like, I wouldn't buy that if it was in a store, right? But you have it because you're like, oh, I paid for it and, you know, I should keep it. And so when I did so you can see the difference between the before and after there. And what I did was instead of, you know, the Marie Kondo method where you're supposed to like take each item and thank it for its service and all that. And I was like, I'm too overwhelmed. I can't do that. So what I ended up doing was I went through my closet. Instead of picking the pieces I wanted to get rid of, I picked the pieces I wanted to keep. And then those went into an empty closet. Everything else went into a spare room. And then, you know, slowly as the weeks went by, I'd be like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't get away, you know, donate that one piece of clothing, and I would go get it and put it in the capsule wardrobe. So now I have about 50 pieces in my capsule wardrobe and all the rest of it is stuff that I'm going to donate later. So that was a really helpful way to do it. Not even just clothes, but I think even home decor and trends like that. I think, again, marketers really want us to part with our money. So they come up with these new trends and these new things to buy. So we just kind of need to think about, you know, the waste associated with that. High quality, sustainable. So some of the fibers a lot of the fibers that we buy are synthetic and they're plastic based. So I think, and they'll last forever. Once they get donated or end up in the landfill, they're not going to biodegrade. So if we move to something that's a bit more natural fiber, there's a better chance that it will degrade over time. So things like bamboo is a really good choice. Linen, organic cotton, or even cotton and hemp. Those are the ones that I'm aware of. There may be others. Silk.
It's natural.
Yeah, silk. Okay. So, so those are some really good choices. I have tried to switch over to linen wherever I can. And then shopping secondhand. I think shopping secondhand and then having clothes tailored. I often didn't shop secondhand because like nothing fits right, and you know you don't feel great in those clothes. But if you go to a tailor, it's amazing how nice a piece of clothing will fit and feel when you actually had it properly tailored to your body. So worth thinking about. And then just in terms of shopping, the carbon footprint. Etsy. How many people have shopped or know of Etsy? So it's an online marketplace. They have shops on this one website from all over the world, but they're handmade or vintage items, and it's a beautiful website to check out. But they have introduced a new program where the packaging, all of the shipping that they do from Etsy is they do carbon offset on 100% of all items that get shipped out of from Etsy. So what they do is invest that money into reducing carbon emissions in other projects, which I think is really great. Travel. Packing light and, you know, just bringing zero waste toiletries. So there's some there you can see, like, you know, the razor. I haven't switched to the razor yet that has the blade that comes out. I'm a little scared to do that, but I'm told it's very easy to use. So I need to have a look at that. But there are a lot of zero waste kind of toiletries when you're traveling. The other thing around traveling is just like there's just a lot of waste associated with airplanes, not only the emissions, but the waste and the food on airplanes. So bringing your own containers. So you can see this little blue container. I just bought one of these. It's a fold up container and I just kind of keep it in my car and take it with when I travel. And paperless if you can get an e-boarding pass. I mean, paper is sort of less of an issue, but planning ahead. So I'm planning a trip to the UK in January, and I've scoped out like the recycling programs and where to find their zero waste stores or those kinds of things. So I've done a little legwork there. And then carbon offset. So I know this isn't really a zero waste thing, but I do get questions about carbon offset. Are people familiar with carbon offset programs? Okay.
Kind of.
So I flew to Thunder Bay in February, and it's 2 hours there and 2 hours back. And there's a calculator online that you can use. Every company that sells carbon offset credits has a calculator. So I went onto this one website, calculated my carbon emissions for that flight, and then I purchased the equivalent. I paid this company $9.56 to offset the amount of carbon I created on that flight. So they took that $9.56 and invested it and I got to pick the project. It's a landfill project in St. Catharines where they're working to reduce methane emissions. So they invest in that. They invested my money in that project to help reduce those emissions. So that's kind of how it works. However, you don't have to necessarily go through a company to do this. I have a friend who has a friend who said that her husband wanted to buy a new car, and the wife was very environmentally friendly. And she said, if you want to buy a new car, you have to offset your emissions in another way. So he became a vegan. So that's just another way to offset your
And Elton
emissions.
John paid.
And there's an organization called the Pembina Institute. Have people heard of the Pembina? Okay, good. Paul knows. So they're a think tank, Canadian think tank, and they are also another really good company to go for information if you're looking for it. But they have a report, and I'll include the link in the document I'll send you. It actually, and I even say what page this is on, they have a table of all of the carbon offset companies, and they're all ranked by how good they think they are.
I think you can do that with your airplane points too. I don't know.
Can you? Yeah, okay, good.
Wow.
That's great. Okay. Kids. Let's talk a little bit about kids. Okay. Again, I think we're starting to see the same kind of principles over and over, but like switching to reusable. I don't have kids, but when I started to do the research on the kids, I was stunned by how far disposable or reusable diapers have come since my mother's day. They have all kinds of things on the internet and Pinterest, like, your own pop-up wipes or your own baby food, or I made actually modeling clay for my nephew for Christmas, and he loved it. It works really well. In fact, actually, the little stand for the sign for the cookies is made of the same modeling clay.
Cool.
Because I needed a stand for the signs, and I'm like, I'll just make them.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
This is it. So true.
The
Again,
grandmother of invention.
Yes. We talked about the snack bags. Trash-free lunches, I think, is a really big thing in schools, right? So making sure that, we're thinking about that when this is, to me, I couldn't resist. I took a picture of this. Dollar store toys. And sure, they're fun, but I always advocate for buying just a higher quality toy that's going to last a little bit longer. And then even if your child outgrows the toy, then it can be donated to another toy, or child. But a lot of these plastic toys break like very quickly. So if we can avoid those. I also got a question on Facebook a few weeks ago about what to do when family members give your kids gifts that aren't eco-friendly. That can be tricky. What we tend to do is for our gift giving is that we always try to let people know what we want in advance, and then it just takes time to help people understand what's an appropriate gift. Sometimes people give me gifts that are that they think are low waste, but not necessarily low waste. So it's just a matter of finding the time for people to get used to that. Parties. So there's you can do decor with paper-based items. Balloons is a real big issue. They're finding it's surprising how these balloons are getting into the environment. I think they've been there for a long time. We're just starting to hear about it now, but a lot of animals are getting affected by that. And the compostable plates. There's paper balloons. There's all kinds of stuff for parties. And then getting kids involved, obviously kids love to get involved in this kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of things for them to do, like litter challenges or declutter challenges, or taking them to the bulk barn and letting them shop for something by themselves. There's also a website called The Story of Stuff. Have people heard of this one? It's a really good website, storyofstuff.org/movies. And there are a bunch of movies that are about 8 minutes, 10 minutes long. You want to probably screen it first because some of them are, it's not that they're not good for kids, it's just that they're meant to appeal to all ages. But the one that I just watched was on the water bottles. Real eye-opener. And they're fun. They're all cartoony and stuff, so they're really good ones to watch. I'm going to move on to gifts and holidays. So again, high-quality gifts, shopping secondhand for gifts where we can, or regifting. Regifting has become a lot more commonplace. Like I know there was a time where people were like, don't let anybody know I'm regifting this. We tend to, in our family, we don't do gifts. Like you get to a point in life where you don't need anything. But my husband's family are here, so we still do gifts. But my family are in other places in Canada, so we don't even do gifts. In fact, my sister's birthday just passed, and I gave her, I donated to the local animal shelter in her name. Yeah. Experiences also is a good option for gifts. And then reusing cards and gift wrap, or doing what's called furoshiki. And then decor, parties, tableware. Again, just keeping in mind the same principles, making sure that we're using reusable or compostable, like live greenery. Those pictures of the decorations there are like those little tip of my tongue.
Cranberries.
Thank you. So cranberries or cookie ornaments, and then reusable plates. I love this centerpiece. It's just apples, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I did such a nice job with that. Other areas. So there are a lot of other areas that we can get back to if there's time. Office and work, so home office, but also work office. There are a lot of things that we can do there as well. Like I know in my office, I work in an office where people sit at desks. There's a lot of like potlucks, plastic cutlery and plastic cups, and so I don't. And my philosophy is not. I don't lecture. I never go around lecturing anybody. But I just try to live by example. And so when I come to the potluck and anybody wants to ask me about my reusable container or my reusable cutlery, I'm more than happy to talk to them about that. So I always keep in my purse my cutlery, my napkin, and a shopping bag. Always have these in my purse. And these are really pretty. You don't have to spend, you can actually use an old napkin and a rubber band and cutlery from your house. I went and I got the fancy, expensive, nice. But these are really pretty and they're nice to use, and I have them.
Great gift, right?
They make a great gift, absolutely, for sure. In terms of the home office, flyers. So if you want to get rid of your flyers, I wrote a letter to Canada Post, and they need that, at least in my jurisdiction, they needed a letter saying I don't want flyers anymore, and now I have a little sticker in my mailbox that says no flyers. So you can actually get them to stop delivering flyers to you. You just have to.
Harvey's and Burger King and all that.
Yeah, and the same with the newspapers. I still like to get a hard paper newspaper. Like I don't necessarily just want to read it all online, but the newspapers come with a lot of flyers too. So I'm sort of toying with the idea. I know in our area, the 2 newspapers that we get delivered, they will unsubscribe you and not deliver to your house. You just have to ask them.
My flyers, I take them right out and go right in the box, but you don't even come in the house.
Most people stand
I don't care,
over,
yeah.
when they get home, they stand over the recycle bin, and they don't even look at it. It just goes right in there, right? So, so if you can get them to stop delivering to you, that's a good option.
Good idea.
Yeah. Basement, the garage, the garden, kind of to me all fits in this category of like big stuff. So things that are broken, things that need to be taken to the hazardous waste depot. There's all kinds of things that are, need to be, that you borrowed from somebody, need to be returned or whatever it is. So those are all things, again, following those principles of reducing and reusing. And then making those things last. So just taking care of our, garden equipment, or I'm terrible for that because I'll go gardening and then I won't clean my equipment afterwards. So I'm just kind of getting in the habit of maintaining those items a little bit longer. And then pets. So we'll talk for a second about pets. We did talk a little bit about pet food. How many people have pets? Pets, couple pets, cats, dogs, cats, both?
All my
cats.
kids do. I
Okay.
don't anymore.
So I am babysitting my sister's cat for a year, And this has been a bit of an eye-opener. I wasn't prepared for this because I'm like, this is my year of zero waste, and then I get this cat, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this cat? So, anyways, we were able to figure it out, which is really great because it put me in a position where I was sort of like needed to kind of find a solution for this. Pets, you can make your own pet food. I don't. I just buy, and in fact, she's kind of particular about what she eats. So I buy vet food, and it comes in a bag, like a crinkly bag like that, which can't be recycled. So I am actually going to buy a Terracycle box for all those plastic things that I'm going to have to get rid of at some point. Now, for most people, I think those things could just, you just would have to get rid of them in the garbage, unless they're recyclable here. I don't know about that kind of plastic. Probably not, right?
They're usually multi-layered, like paper.
Yeah. Paper with a plastic lining, and yeah. Now, when I buy the cat litter, I buy the wheat-based cat litter, and the small bags are paper, and the big bags are plastic. So I just buy a bunch of small bags. So I even go to the till, and she says, you can buy the big ones, right? I'm like, I know, I'll stick with the paper. The other thing is pet waste.
Oh,
Pet waste, I believe, can you compost pet waste here in
I
Orangeville?
don't think so.
No, we can't. In order to be able to compost pet waste, you need an anaerobic digester. Like the municipality needs to build an anaerobic digester. Now, we're getting one in Peel, but not for probably 5 years. So in the meantime, your pet waste is trash. Composting, backyard composting pet waste. So cats in particular are tricky because they can carry a toxoplasma virus. It's actually a parasite. So I've really wanted to know the answer to this question. So I called vets, I called pet food stores. Nobody knew the answer to this. I finally got a hold of a professor at the University of Guelph who wrote a book on toxoplasmosis. She literally wrote the book on it. So what she told me, and this was really great to know, is that if your cat, because it's only the cat that carries this risk, if your cat has been an indoor cat its whole life and has never hunted or eaten raw meat, like you haven't given it a raw food diet, it won't have toxoplasmosis. It won't have that parasite. Mm-hmm. However, if it's hunted or if it's been an outdoor cat, then you have to be really careful about composting. Now, I've done trench composting in the backyard for the pet waste. Yeah. We're on a well, so slightly risky. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't recommend this for everybody. It's also really hard work to do trench composting. So you just sort of dig a trench and then you compost in there. So that is one option, but I believe this cat has been an outdoor cat in the past, so probably I would not advise that for other people.
I've only done that for the dog.
The dog, okay, yeah.
I've never put the cat.
Yeah. The other thing is that if you are composting pet waste, just don't use it for any edible gardening. Okay, so good. Purging. Just a quick word on purging. That's quite a picture, isn't it?
Downsizing diva.
Downsizing, right. So when you purge, you're gonna make garbage. It's gonna happen, right? But the trick to it is purging and then not buying it again, right? Like figuring out what you don't need in your life and just saying goodbye to it for good. So there are lots of ways to do this. You can give stuff away. Some of it will end up in the garbage. There are apps there's an app called Let Go where you can trade or give away things on that app. You can have a swap party with your neighbors. You can donate. You can repurpose things. And then again, replace it. Don't replace it, or replace it with something that's really high quality that isn't going to end up in the pile in a few months. Again, it doesn't have to be expensive, but sometimes it is worth the investment. I think in the last maybe 5-10 years, I've gone through, I don't know what it is about can openers. They don't work for me. They don't like me for some reason. I think I've gone through probably 5 can openers, but the reason is because I keep buying the cheap ones. So I finally went and I bought like a $40 can opener, and I love this thing. I'll never buy another can opener now. So, I mean, just things like that. I'm going to talk really quickly about how to get started. Do a waste audit. Now, there are websites where you can download forms and you can categorize and weigh your stuff. And I really think just for the next few weeks, just pay attention to what you're throwing away and start to think about, ways that you can maybe reduce your waste. Starting with the easy stuff. So again, when you're at the grocery store, just buy the veg that is loose or the fruit that's loose that doesn't come in a bag. Bulk store. If you haven't been to the bulk store, go. They have so much great stuff there, and it really, really easy to shop, especially in Orangeville. They're very pro container here, so go check them out. Try a new recipe. Like I said, I'm going to send you some recipes that you can try. The cracker recipe is particularly good. It's 4 ingredients, all seeds. That's it. So very healthy too. Eating more simply, again, like I said, I eat a lot more simply than I used to, and I don't tend to buy a lot of like complicated ingredients anymore. Reduce gradually, so just replace things as you run out. So if you run out of, use up all your cling film until you want to buy beeswax wrap, or use up all of the pasta that's in a plastic bag and then switch to the bulk barn pasta. Breaking habits, this took a long time. For the first few months of the year, I kept throwing my paper towel in the trash at work. And then I would be like, oh my gosh, and I have to fish out my paper towel out of the garbage. And then the other women in the washroom would be like, what is she doing? Because I'm in there digging around for my paper towel. So I finally got the hang of that. But there are other things, like just remembering to bring your bag. Like now it's a no-brainer. I always have my grocery bag. I always have my napkin. These things I always have with. I keep the bulk barn jars in the car so that I just have those things. So just make it a lot easier for yourself. And then just going slow. That's one of the beauties of zero waste, is that it does, or reducing your waste, is it really forces you to simplify and to just live a little bit more slowly. I mean, we think we live in this really chaotic environment, so it's just nice to slow down and think about what you need for the day. Benefits, I think we've talked about a lot of these already. The less exposure to toxic chemicals in your home. You're not going to have to take your garbage as much to the curb. You'll make healthier choices. You're going to save time and money. You're going to only shop for the things that you actually need. You're going to be able to, reclaim some skills that maybe you didn't have or you had forgotten, like bread making. There's way less clutter in my house than there used to be, and a lot less stress in my life. And then, of course, the less impact to the environment, which is really the whole purpose. But for me, the one thing that I got as a benefit from zero waste that I was not anticipating was the freedom that it gives you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. I feel now free from cheap stuff. I think we feel very compelled to buy stuff on sale, and you want to, save your money, and you always feel like you've got to find the most affordable thing. I don't feel like that anymore. Now I feel like I can actually buy quality items because I'm not buying as much, and I'm free from clutter, which is so liberating. I'm free from a lot of complication. Like, again, I think we live in a very busy society. A lot of things we do are kind of time wasters. So I don't feel like I'm doing that. One of the time wasters that I used to do was I would spend hours looking for the perfect recipe, and then I would spend hours shopping for the ingredients, right? I just don't bother with that anymore. I feel free from influence. I don't feel like I have to follow trends. I don't feel like I'm influenced by social pressure. I don't feel like I have to keep up with my neighbors. I don't feel influenced by commercials or marketing anymore because I know clearly what I want, what I don't want now. One of the things that I always ask when I think maybe should buy something, I think, is it good for me or my family? Is it going to be good for the environment? And is it going to be a good investment? So the example I always give is I was watching TV and one of those anti-aging skin cream commercials came on, and I was like, oh, maybe I need some of that, right? And I thought, is it going to be good for me? Well, it's probably got a lot of chemicals in it that I don't want on my skin. Is it good for the environment? Probably not, because for the same reason, but it comes in packaging or whatever. And is it a good investment? Is it going to turn the clock back? Probably not. No. So immediately I was like, oh, I don't even have to think about that. I can take that off my list of things I might have to pick up when I go out.